You do all the work, and then right before things are about to take off, you bail or get bored, you pump out both tons of contacts, but you forget to ask for the sale, or you are sick and tired of discounting, and yet you discount again, or you know exactly what to do, but you're paralyzed. Sound familiar? We're going to talk about exactly why you do this and what you should do instead. All right, so I'm Geeta Nadkarni, founder of Impact with Influence, and today I want to talk about patterns of self-sabotage. This is such a big deal, especially in the work that we do, because yes, we help coaches and consultants and course creators build super profitable, high impact, high ticket, in other words, premium programs. But typically when you step into this space and you really own your purpose, you really own your expertise, it's not the step-by-step pieces that get people stuck. It's not because they don't have the skills. It's not because they can't figure out the tech. It's not because of any of those reasons. The reasons that people typically get stuck is because they have some kind of internal barrier to success. They have an internal block. They have deep, hidden even from them, deep-seated fears that need to be addressed, that need to be surfaced, and that need to be addressed in order for any of the tactical information to land appropriately for them. So this is for you if you've struggled with consistency. This is for you if you find it really hard to ask for the sale. This is for you if you burn yourself out over-delivering but still always feel like you're never good enough and you've never done enough. This is for you if you know exactly what to do, but you sit there paralyzed and are unable to be consistent, or unable to get anything done at all. This is for you if you do all of the work, you put all the pieces in place, you work your ass off, you go through this entire sprint, and then you get to the end, and right before it's about to take off, right before you're literally about to get paid in all of the ways that one gets paid, right? Money, recognition, impact, clients, compliments, all of that, like that joyful fulfillment of actually doing the work. Right before that happens, whoop, you pull the plug, right? You bail, you get bored, you ask yourself, maybe I should do this other thing, and you delay the launch, right? You're like, no, I need to add this other component. This is not complete. And so the launch day just keeps going further and further into the distance. Tell me in the comments. So if you're listening to this, first of all, if you're listening to the replay, give me a big old hashtag replay. And then I would like those of you who are listening live here to tell me in the comments, tell me where you're from, and tell me which of these patterns, or if you have a pattern that I haven't mentioned here, put that pattern in the comments, and I'm going to come back and make sure that I go through the comments, whether it's during this live or even after the fact. I'm going to make sure that I go through each of them and speak to your specific pattern. So today we're going to talk about, let's call them 6. They're big, broad strokes patterns. There are obviously loads and loads of patterns. Each person that we work with brings their own individual pattern. However, they typically fall under certain broad categories. And so those are the categories that I'm going to be discussing today. All right. We're going to start with the broadest of all the categories, past trauma. So now most people hear trauma and they think, well, I don't know if this applies to me because I haven't been a victim of domestic violence. I haven't been a victim of sexual abuse. I haven't been a victim of anything really egregious that would qualify as trauma. So most people think that it doesn't apply to them. But here's what trauma actually is. Trauma is about you having unresolved emotion. So your body is holding on to unresolved emotion that creates a hormonal cascade, that creates, certain pathways in your brain that basically colors your lens and makes you look at data, happenstance, client conversations, etc., through a particular lens. And that basically makes you feel like you're living Groundhog Day. Like no matter how hard you work, no matter what you try, you just can't make progress. So if that sounds like you, then chances are you're actually dealing with trauma. And I wanted to give you some examples of what this can show up as. So I want to make sure that my sound is good, everybody can hear me well, and that this is coming through loud and clear. So just let me know if that's working. Beautiful. People are commenting. So I'm just going to pull this up on my phone so that I can try and follow your comments to the best of my ability. But I'm going to talk about how this pattern of trauma shows up. So typically, this pattern of trauma will show up when whoa, here we go. There we are. All right. I see your comments. Hey, I see Maria. I see Namita. I see Sarah Walker. So Sarah says, rather than getting bored or distracted, I'm clear that I get scared right before launch and the fear gets really loud. So that's great. That's totally normal. And that's normal. And if you have a process to deal with that fear, if you have support in kind of walking you through that path, then this is a normal part of being an entrepreneur. It's never really going to go away. There's always going to be some element of that you're going to deal with. What you want is a proper process to deal with it so that when it comes up, each time you up level, because that's a never ending process, you're going to be able to move forward. So let's talk about what past trauma can show up as when you are stuck in it. You're unable to be consistent. You have trouble asking for the sale. Sometimes, people who are scared to be seen, a lot of people with past trauma will be scared to be seen. Like literally, it is this piece. It's like if I actually do the live, if I actually write the post, if I actually put myself and these vulnerable ideas that feel very, very close to my heart, that feel incredibly like my deepest expression of who I am and what my truth is, if I were to put this out there and it's like ... And that's the thing, your conscious mind can't even see what the ... is. Your subconscious mind literally will shut that door and make you like skitter away, right? And so you never actually put yourself out there. So this is what this trauma looks like. And how many of you can identify with this pattern? Tell me in the comments, because this is a really, really common pattern. So what ends up happening here, and the reason that we have an entire exercise that goes into deep detail, it's free, it's in the Messaging That Makes Money group here on Facebook. You can go take a look at it and actually watch the video and do the steps because I go through it in very great detail. The problem that happens in a situation like this is that you have this block, but it is hidden from you. Your subconscious hides it from you. Like I said, it shuts the window. It's like it's ... You don't even know. There's no actual story that you're consciously aware of that's attached to this, so you can't deal with it. That's the problem. And that's why people will try thing after thing, course after course, coach after coach, all of these different things. There you go. Brianna says, totally in that pattern. People will do all of these things, and no matter what they try, they can't get unstuck. You need to find out what the ... is. And that's what I did a whole other video on that, so I'm not going to get into the details here, but go look for the subconscious blocks exercise so you can do that. Now, I'm going to give you an example of a client that we worked with where you're like, how does this even qualify as trauma? And yet it was the thing that was holding her back. So she had worked in corporate before she became a coach. She had worked in corporate. And at the time she was working in this department, she would write client-facing copy. So she would put out memos, she would write some client-facing copy, maybe it was ad copy, I'm not sure but exactly what the details were, but these would go out to that company's clients. She had a manager that came in at one point and pointed out all of the typos and all of the grammatical errors and all of the spelling mistakes that she made on some of the things that she had sent out. And that person was extremely toxic, probably narcissistic, definitely jealous. And that person came in and basically wiped away her confidence in her ability to write and communicate. And what was interesting about this situation is that her communications that were going out to the clients were actually getting great results. Their sales numbers were actually going up. It was working. It worked. She was being celebrated in multiple meetings. The boss of all the capo di tutti capi or whatever, the boss of all the bosses was super impressed with her and piled on the praise. But this one manager came in, and because she had an underlying pattern of self-sabotage and because she had unresolved trauma from her own childhood about not being good enough, instead of believing all the praise, instead of believing the actual metrics of results, she believed the manager, and it shut her down. She stopped writing. She incorporated this belief that she was not a good writer, that writing was not her thing, that she was made too many mistakes and she couldn't trust her own writing. It was really when we boiled it down, when we worked with her on her mindset, it was really about boiling it down to self-trust. When we started working with her through hypnotherapy and through our mindset team's work we gave her We have templates in our program to show you how to build your messaging, right? So we actually teach you a methodology. But when she was doing it, she kept getting stuck. And she kept saying, oh, this is not working. I don't know how to do this. And when I was looking at her actual homework submissions, they were great. And I was like, what is this story? There's a huge disconnect between what's actually happening and what your perception is. And that's what ends up happening with these patterns of self-sabotage. Everybody else can see something totally different. You see something that doesn't make any sense. Like, do you see what I mean? There's a big discrepancy there. So we actually ended up working with her on self-trust and of forgiving herself, that past self in the past that had bought that story, because this was the manager's story about what her ability was. She bought it though, and then that became her story. And because it became her story, she had been carrying it all this time. So she had to forgive herself for picking up that story, and she had to forgive the manager for whatever limitations caused them to create that story. Excuse me. This is the thing that
You have a bottle of water.
I have a bottle of water right here. Okay. Magic!
I'm sorry, but your background is stressing me out a little
So
bit.
Pat is like...
You forgot to turn on the light! Oh my God.
Pat's here to micromanage my lighting.
You forgot to turn on the light. Not only that, you're afraid of it.
And give me water when I accidentally choke on saliva, which is always very classy. You come here for the class, I know. Okay, moving on. So all this to say, when we worked with her on getting through this pattern, when we worked with her on conditioning her self-trust. So again, you're not going to go through your life and comb through every single little piece of trauma. Obviously, that's going to take the rest of this life and possibly multiple other lifetimes. That's not how we do what we do. What we do is we look at what is the opposite of this self-doubt? What is the opposite of this trauma? What is the thing that was shaken for you? And then we help you reinforce. In this case, it was self-trust, right? So when we worked with her on self-trust, now she's completely able to be consistent, and it's effortless. So she went from being unable to put herself out there, convinced that she was doing it all wrong, and therefore unable to be consistent, to now doing it consistently and feeling effortless. That's what that looks like. Okay, let's move on to point number 2. So point number 2 is fear of judgment. So when you have fear of judgment, how many of you can identify with this? And people are like, no, I don't have fear of judgment. I don't, like, it's not other people's judgment that I'm worried about. All judgment is self-judgment. All judgment is self-judgment. You need to really let that sink in. The next time you look at someone's butt in their pants and you're like, whoa, what is she wearing? That's actually self-judgment. So every time you notice yourself, and this is just an exercise in observation that I would love every single one of you to do, just notice. Don't judge. And this is going to be hard because it's your pattern. You judge. That's what you do. But the purpose of this is not for you to stop doing it. The purpose of you is to just notice how much you do it. And that's going to help you with the stopping naturally. You're not going to have to force the stop in any real way in the front part of this, right? There you go. Sarah Walker sees it. That's mic drop right there. That is your pattern, Sarah, where you get really afraid. What you're afraid of is self-judgment. You're afraid of the judgment that will fall upon you when you're not good enough, when it isn't all the things you need it to be, when you don't live up to whatever perfectionist standard you have created for yourself that is impossible for anyone to live up to. That's why you don't launch. That's why you delay the launch. That's why things get bigger and bigger the closer you come to anything being real. And you know what? People don't just do this with launches. I've noticed people do this with commitments of all kinds. All kinds. People will have trouble deciding what to have for dinner. People will have trouble deciding what to wear on video. People will have trouble when, they'll talk about how they would give anything to fix this problem. And then when it's time to commit and make an investment and actually get help, they will bail because they have such fear. You know what's interesting about this? They're not bailing because they're judging the coach. And I want you to tell you this so that you can see this from yourself as you're the person doing this, but you're also going to see this where you're on a call with a client or a prospect, and your prospect is going to do this to you. And now you will understand why they're doing it. Okay? So in that moment of decision, what happens is you're asking them, okay, you've told me all the reasons why you absolutely need to fix this right freaking now. Now's the time. You're in all of this pain. This totally sucks for you. Here's the path. This is going to work. And then they're like, I need to think about it. I need to sit with it. I need to meditate. I need to ask somebody. I need to do like all of the different reasons that excuses that people make. But in that moment, the reason that they're doing it is because they're so afraid that what if they do this? What if they hope? What if they invest? What if they take this chance? What if they take this leap and then it ends up not being exactly what they need it to be? The person they're going to judge is not you. The person they're going to judge is themselves. And they're so sick of being judged as less than. That's it. Like being judged as wanting, being judged as not good enough, not smart enough to have made the right decision, not smart enough to have asked the right questions, not smart enough to have had a crystal ball to see the future. Nobody has these abilities. The people who are successful in life, in any sphere, choose your sphere, it'll be the same, are the people who trust themselves to make the right decisions. They're able to live with their decisions. Whatever decision they make, they're able to move forward without that layer and that weight of self-judgment. Does that make sense? So Sarah asks a question. What response do you find is effective to offer potential clients in that moment? Sarah, the best thing you can do is to understand your own process through this. This is not where I'm like, oh, here's a script, Sarah, and then you're going to read through the script. I can guarantee you that if you haven't resolved this in your own psyche, in your own consciousness, you're going to read through the script, you're going to get to it, and there'll be one other sentence that isn't on that script, and that's exactly the sentence that client will ask, right? And then you're going to be like, crap, it didn't work. And then you're going to think that it didn't work, but it's not that. It's because you haven't lived this transformation yourself. You can't take somebody else on a transformation that you have not experienced yet. It just doesn't work very well. So my suggestion to you would be to really understand your own process through this. And then when you have moved through this, when you have done this, you have been in that doubt and fear and whatever, and you have got a process to get you to the other side where you are able to trust yourself, make a decision, make a commitment, get the help, whatever it is that you want your client to do. When you have done it, then when it comes up with your client, you're not going to be afraid of it. You're going to be like, oh yeah, totally. I know exactly how shitty this feels. I've been there, not just once, but multiple times. And here's what you need to know about what's waiting for you on the other side. And you'll be able to speak with a confidence that no script can ever give you. Does that make sense to you? That's my answer to that. So I recently spoke to somebody who had massive fear of judgment. They had this incredible track record. They knew exactly how to do what they did. And they had all of these amazing folks in their network that were millionaires and very, very accomplished, right? So they had very accomplished people. They had very, very wealthy people. They had very advanced people in their network. Ironically, all ideal clients. Ironically, the fact that they were wealthy and successful and advanced actually made them ideal for what this person did. But this prospect that I spoke with could not go ahead and make an offer or even kind of talk about what they did because deep down they were afraid that they were not good enough, right? So when he was afraid that he was not good enough, that prevented him from putting his content out there. It prevented him from having these deep conversations. And think about how ironic all of this is, because people who are wealthy, people, I mean, not everybody, but people, especially the people that he was most concerned about were people who were successful. It was not the wealthy part that was the issue. It was the fact that they're so successful. I mean, how can someone as silly and young and inexperienced, or fill in the blank with whatever the adjective was, how can someone like me help those people? They're so much further along than me. That was the issue there. But what's interesting about it is, here's me. Here's your cat butt of the video. You're welcome. So the issue was that they were so advanced that she was like, that he was like, oh my God, how can I possibly, momentito. Bye-bye, it's me. She's not happy. How can I possibly help them? And how could, I mean, they could work with anybody. Why on earth would they work with me? And that's a very valid question, especially if you're not demonstrating that you have the goods. If you're not demonstrating to them that you are absolutely the shiz, that you know what you're talking about, that you can talk not just about the tactical pieces, but about all of the deeper mindsets and belief systems and internal blocks and reasons for getting stuck. If you can't talk about all of these things, if you do talk about them, first of all, those people are going to be like, oh, hell yes, I want somebody who really gets it. All of us, you, me, everybody here wants to work with someone who really gets it. Someone who doesn't just have book learning, someone who has lived it, someone who can walk us through all of the points at which we're going to get stuck, not because, again, we don't have the skills or we don't have the time or we don't have the money or we don't have the things that we need. It's because we get scared and we fall victim to doubt and we don't know how to proceed. You want someone who can hold you in that moment, and that is not going to be a deal breaker for the process to work, because that someone knows how to pull you through that place. So in this particular person's case, he just actually couldn't bring himself to put himself out there because he kept judging himself, and he kept judging himself through and using them as proxies to judge him. So a lot of us do that. Does that sound dailydosefcat.com? Totally. Oh my God, Raina, this is hilarious. Can I send a litter box? This comment section is hysterical. As long as, yes, you can send a litter box as long as you come over and clean it. Just saying. Okay. Another thing that I want to talk about here is fear of judgment. So I was going to tell you about a client that we worked with. So this client that we worked with was super judgy. She wouldn't have thought of herself that way, to be fair. She didn't consider herself that, but it came out in the way that she talked about her competition. So notice, again, this is an act of noticing. Notice how you talk about people who are in your space, who are your competition. I don't believe in competition, but whatever. People who are in your space doing similar things to you. Notice how you talk about them. Notice how you think about them. Even if you don't say things out loud, notice how you think about them. What is your attitude towards them? Because all of that energy is actually pointed right at you. She was so busy judging them as lacking that she was completely paralyzed about putting her own work out there, because she was like, I judged them so harshly for doing that. Well, what if I end up doing something similar to that? Nobody wants to grow up to be someone they don't respect, right? So her sense of judgment was paralyzing her. And the stupid thing is that she kept working super hard, though, pumping out content, doing all this stuff. Everything was, she was unable to charge what she really wanted to charge, what she knew that her work was worth. And so by undercharging, and here's something super important that you need to listen to, especially if you, my friend, are undercharging. She was way undercharging, like way undercharging. She was still having trouble making sales. And the reason she was having trouble making sales is because the value was so low that people didn't even understand what they were buying, because it didn't make sense. The discrepancy between what she was actually doing and the price point was so vast that people were like, I need real help. I don't want like fucking $20 help. You know what I mean? They needed real help. And so they were like, I'm going to go work with someone else. And that's what ended up happening. And so she was like super resentful, but at the same time, she judged herself and couldn't bring herself to raise her rates. So she was caught in this vicious cycle. Her clients were caught in this vicious cycle. We helped her work on self-trust. We helped her release some of that judgment. We helped her work on forgiveness through our one-on-one mindset sessions. And what ended up happening is we moved, as she began to release that weight, her messaging shifted. So when we helped her, develop the messaging that she was now putting out, it had a completely different energy to it. And she closed her, her program was $3,000. She closed 5 sales in the first month that she put it out there, and her calendar was packed, right? And that's how that works. When you release fear of judgment and you stop judging yourself, the perfectionism falls away. You have permission to put yourself out there. You can get things done. You can work with people, and they don't have, and you're going to, in releasing it in yourself, you're going to release it in them too. All right, let's move on. So the next one I want to talk about is fear of abandonment. All right. Fear of abandonment is a big one. How many of you can relate to this? I know this was a huge one for me, by the way. So this was a huge piece for me where because I wasn't close to my mom because I had, issues feeling completely secure in that relationship. And there's no shame in any of this. Not her fault, not my fault. This happened to be the circumstance, and we each had our limitations, and those limitations put together created this pattern. So no fault of anybody's. It just was what it was. And because I had not healed it, because I had not resolved it, again, it shows up as you're like, I want to be liked. I want to not piss people off. I don't want to confront anybody. I don't want to do, like, there are all these different ways that can show up. It can also, in certain cases, make it very difficult for you to have boundaries. It can be very hard for you to have boundaries. So if you're one of those people that way over delivers, you're working all the hours, you're bending over backwards, you're doing all this extra stuff and you're delivering all of it, and still your clients are like, well, I don't know, I'm still not receiving this other thing, or can I go on a payment plan, or I don't, can I put my program on pause? So after all of that, people are like, can I put my program on pause? Can you give me an extension on the payment plan, or whatever that looks like? And we've had many clients who have come to us with that particular pattern that we've worked with them through. And what ends up happening is it's only when you finally fully accept yourself, and this is the work that I have done so much, I've spent so many hours of mindset work on myself doing this exact thing. It's when you start to build that self-acceptance where you're like, no, this is what I do. It's such a huge one right now for so many of us. When you finally work and you condition it, and again, we have custom audio tracks that we create for our clients that work on their specific block. So mine, like I told you, mine was a big one was fear of abandonment and fear of and lack of self-trust. So those were the two things, and they often go together. So what we did was we worked on fear of abandonment. The antidote to that is self-acceptance, and of course, self-trust. So those two things together, we conditioned it, and that's how I've been able to build this thriving, amazing company with an amazing team, with amazing clients, 7 figures. All of that has come from, ultimately, it wasn't tactical changes I made. It was this internal shift that makes the way I show up so different from what you've experienced elsewhere. Does that make sense? So fear of abandonment is a big one. Next one, fear of success. This is one of my favorites. There's so many layers to this. Oh, so many layers. Here's how fear of success will typically show up. Typically you'll bail, right at the moment of release. You'll bail. You'll have squirrel syndrome. So like you're constantly like, I could do this, or I could do that, or I could do this other thing, or I could do, and there's so much pressure to be successful that you literally cannot get started. And the goals are gigantic. So if any of you are like, I want to make $1 million a month, and I've spoken to people like this, by the way, and here's what I ask them. I say, yeah, you want to make $1 million a month? Great. Have you made $1 million a year? And most of them have not, right? In fact, none of them had. And I was like, what does $1 million a month feel like in your body? And they had no idea. And I was like, that's what you've got paralyzing fear of success here, because I can tell you that $1 million a month is so far out of your range of understanding and physical expression that it might as well not be real. That's how you keep yourself safe. It's not even real. There's no skin in the game. You can continue to just pussyfoot. You can tell yourself the story. It's someday. It's the same thing as someday. Someday I will do it. That's $1 million a month. If you're making 500 grand a month, sure, then $1 million, absolutely, that makes sense. But if you're making less than 10 grand and you want to make $1 million a month, and that's your goal right now, then that just shows me that this is like way far out of your range. And the reason that you're doing that is you have fear of success. Another reason that another pattern that I see is thinking small. So sometimes it's the opposite. And I've certainly worked with clients, and we've worked through, some of our mastery clients, especially. Once they have their initial success, then they start to get like really scared. So just so you know, when some of our clients succeed, success can breed fear of success. And I'll tell you why, because many of us have an upper limit to this. Okay. So we have an upper limit where we're like, this is the amount of joy, abundance, love, connection, happiness that I can tolerate. This is a concept. I did not invent this. This is from Gay Hendricks. He has a great book called The Big Leap, which I highly recommend you read. And he talks about this upper limit. But just for the purposes of this video, what ends up happening is that people start to be successful and they can see that more success is possible because what we help you build is a fully scalable system, right? You have deep connection with your clients, but at the same time, you can absolutely scale. And in our mastery program, we teach people how to do that. So once they have the initial success, then it's like, how do you solidify the base and how do you kind of build out the pieces moving forward? So what ends up happening there is that they start to think, oh my God, okay, if I have like 5 clients now, then in order to get to like 100K a month, and Katie Papo actually did a great post on exactly this because we worked with her on that. Look for, I think it's on September 1st, 2020 is when her post is. So if you go scroll through the feed, you'll find it. But she talked about her next goal. She's now at 25, 30K a month that we helped her get there from zero. Like she was making 6K a month working for other people. And then, we got her to 25, 30K a month in just over a year, or a little 18 months. And what ended up happening is now when she's looking at her next goal, which is like, how do I get to 6 figures a month? There's all of this crushing panic that comes with it, right? So she's just like, nope, I'm just going to think small. I'm going to look at all of these like small problems. And here's what I'll tell you, and this is what I told her, is that when you're looking at doubling your revenue, you're going to think very differently than when you're thinking of 10xing your revenue. Because doubling your revenue means doubling your effort. And most of us, it wouldn't be healthy. It wouldn't be balanced. But a lot of us could probably double, or maybe not exactly double, but put in a little bit more work. But when you look at 10xing, there's no way that any of us could 10x our effort. So now you have to think of a completely different system, a completely different pathway. Does that make sense? And a huge part of what we look at, and again, this is why that subconscious blocks exercise is so absolutely crucial. You have to know what are your personal limiters and inhibitors to success, because they will be different from mine. They will be different from somebody else's. There are some common patterns that emerge because we are a collective consciousness, but each of us will have like a core one that's really fraught and really loaded. And if you don't know what yours is, you can't speak to it. If you don't speak to it, if you don't address that need that your subconscious has, I will guarantee you will not be successful. Even if you make the revenue goal, it will come at such a terribly high cost that you will not be able to sustain it. Okay. So here are some of the layers of fear of success. And I actually made notes because they're so juicy and there are so many of them. So one of the reasons so I wanted to mention the subconscious blocks exercise again. This is a whole standalone video that's in the video section or the media section of Messaging That Makes Money, our group on Facebook. And what I want you to do is go in there, and the really cool question, it's the third step of the 5-step process, is you have to say, it helps you find out what are you actually afraid of. And you do this by saying, if I were to make, so in Katie's case, it would be, if I were to make $100,000 a month sustainably, I fear that, or I worry that. And then you stop censoring, stop trying to make sense, just let your hand write. Just write, whatever comes up. And some of the stuff that comes up, you're going to be like, what the F is that? What? It's going to feel like somebody else is talking. I'm not even joking. That's how disconnected most people are from their subconscious. So prepare yourself, because it's super revealing. It's very powerful. And then, of course, we have 2 other steps to help you reconcile that. So that's one. Fear of success and fear of failure are interlinked. So this speaks to what Sarah was talking about, where she's just like, oh, I'm super fraught. Like the fear becomes really huge right when I'm about to launch or when I'm about to put something out. We think, so here's how they're linked, okay? So I'm not one of those people who's going to say something and be like, that was really profound. I'm just going to leave it there and then not explain it, because that's bullshit, okay? That's an internet meme and we don't work like that. So here's how I'm going to explain to you in detail how fear of success and fear of failure are interlinked. Typically, especially when you're in the playing small kind of, if that's the way that it expresses for you, you're afraid of failure. The fear of failure is, I'm not going to be good enough. I'm not going to have all the answers. I'm not going to be able to deliver consistently. I'm not going to be able to play with a client of this caliber. right? I'm not going to be able to maintain this facade of knowing what the hell I'm doing because I don't. It's all of those things. Those are fear of failure. But typically, notice how all of those, in order for this fear to happen, in order for this failure rather to happen, you have to have a client of great caliber, which is success. You have to have a whole bunch of people working with you so that you fail to deliver. You actually have to manifest success in order to fail. You see how those two things are interlinked? So most of us really fear keeping up, managing, but the real reason that we'd be in that position is because we're successful. Another thing, fear of success, I have noticed this is another very common thread. Yay, I'm so happy, Jennifer saying, I so appreciate your honesty and your passion for sharing the truth here. Aw, yay, I love you too. This is why I do what I do. And what is awesome about having this outlet. So I'm so grateful to you for watching my videos, for giving me this platform and for interacting with me, because that's the juiciest part of all. And that's what inspires me to keep going and me to go deeper, is because now when I run into my own internal roadblocks, now when I hit some kind of wall, when I hit my own upper limit, when I have a big bubbling of fear of abandonment, fear of, lack of trust or whatever it is that comes up for me, my motivation to release it is just exponentially greater, because I am no longer doing it just for myself. I know that if I can figure this out, I'm going to be able to bring that story back to one of these videos. And that really motivates me. It takes away all my fear of perfectionism. Like, it takes away that sense of like, I need to have the answer because like blah. It's like, no, it's like I get to tell a great story. So it doesn't matter how this works out, the story is going to be a good one. Do you see what I mean? So you have in so many ways been such a huge catalyst for my own healing. I know now that the more I heal, the more I'm going to blow open a door for you to walk through towards your own healing. The more I help you heal, the more that healing, I get to re-experience that healing for myself. And that's exactly what we teach our clients to do, so that they can have that alignment, right? Where the more you heal, the more your clients heal. The more your clients heal, the more you heal. And then that becomes like a round robin circle. So now personal development and your coaching work are one and the same thing. It's a beautiful closed loop. It's not two separate things that you now have to like split your energy between, because none of us like to feel split. So one thing that I wanted to talk about with fear of success is that a huge pattern that I've seen, that I have also worked very much to overcome, is a fear of losing it all. Whoa, how many of you did that? Did that like give you goosebumps? Or did that just like land like a brick in your solar plexus, right? One of the reasons we prevent ourselves from being successful is because deep down we're thinking, if I were to actually taste it and then lose it and then have it taken away and then have it fall apart, then have it not be sustained, then have, someone call me on it and then find out that I'm a fraud and I cannot have this, that would be a million times worse, right? Because now you know what you're missing. Now you've tasted the hallowed land. And we've worked with many of our clients who have brought this in. And in fact, we've worked with clients who have lived it even, who have had, in some cases, multi-million-dollar businesses that have come and worked with us because they had their peak and then they've been on a consistent ebb, and then they're ebbing and ebbing and ebbing. And now they're like, we're running as fast as we can. We're working harder than we did when we were a multi-million-dollar business, and we're making a fraction of what we used to make. And we don't know what the hell to change because we just don't know what we don't know. And they've also accumulated a whole bunch of trauma and, unresolved emotions along the way that need to be processed in order for them to leave the past in the past and rebuild something that is appropriate for what's here, and not rebuild that because that is no longer appropriate here, if that makes sense. So we had a client who had also built a very successful business. It was a 7-figure business. She had bought this gorgeous house, and her partner completely screwed her over, like in so many ways, multiple layers of screwing over. And when she came to us, what we realized is that she had all of the skills. How many of you feel this way, right? You have all the skills. You're smarter than most of the people in the field. You've done the work. You've clocked the hours. You've got the pieces that you need, and yet for some reason you just can't put them together, or it just isn't working out and you can't tell what the heck the gaps are. And that is what was happening with her. And so what we realized was she had not forgiven her partner, and she had not forgiven herself. More than her partner, she had not forgiven herself. She had not grieved the loss. She was such a get up and go positive person that she was just like, I'm just going to keep going. I'm the person who overcomes. I'm the person who's just always going to prevail. I'm the person who's always going to do what needs to be done. And because she had done that, yes, that attitude serves you well up to a point. You cannot grow exponentially just doing that. Having a positive attitude is super important, no question about it. But if you have a whole bunch of unresolved negative emotions under there, I can guarantee you, pinky promise, they're going to bite you on the ass. They're either going to come out as self-sabotage, all the patterns we talked about here, or they're going to come out as health problems. I mean, we have many people in this group that have lived this cycle and know firsthand how unresolved emotions can actually eat you up from the inside and turn into all kinds of physical manifestations. So one of the biggest issues here is, again, the opposite of fear of loss is, again, self-trust. If you can always trust yourself to be okay, if you know that you're okay no matter what, then you have permission to proceed. You have permission to dream as big as you need to dream. You have permission to attract whoever you need to attract, and you will be fine. I had a conversation with someone who talked about there's layers of lots of the different patterns here. Fear of judgment, that's one. And there's fear of success as well here. And she talked about how she didn't believe in credit cards, does not believe in credit cards, is not open to using them. And the reason she doesn't believe in credit cards is because she's heard all of these stories of people getting into severe debt and getting defrauded and all of this other jazz. And she was like, I just choose to not use credit cards at all, right? And what was interesting about this is I said, oh, that's interesting, because I use credit cards all the time. I have zero consumer debt, like none. In fact, most of my cards are overpaid a little bit. And I have had vacations where I have got literally the credit card, we use them for points, right? We use our credit cards for points. My credit card company has paid for my family vacation. So that was like free fucking money there. And the reason I was able to do that is because I was able to use that tool for my benefit. I was able to use that tool as it was actually intended. I didn't use that tool to harm myself. I have knives in my kitchen, right? Those knives can be used to self-harm. Those knives can be used to chop vegetables to make a nutritious meal for my family. It's not the tool that's the issue. It's the lack of trust or not, or it's either the trust that you have or the lack of it. Does that make sense? So I want you to just really think about the things that you are afraid of. But that lack of trust around credit cards then made her very fraught around asking for money from other people. And she realized, under there was a whole bunch of money mindset issues where she had a lot of aversion to being wealthy because she had had some negative experiences with wealthy people in her childhood. And so peeling all those layers back, all of this comes to light. And it's only when you release those that it makes sense. Tell me? All right. So moving on. Pat just spoke in my ear and he said, moving on. All right. Second to last. It's like, moving on. No, it's not. It wasn't like that. I'm not mean. Okay. So Pat's just talking to me and I sound like a crazy person because you can't hear him, but I can. Anyway, magic. That is the voice in my head. True story. Okay, next one is inner child rebellion. How many of you feel like you've been in coaching programs, or you have been coached, or you have been trying to do things, and you get to this point where you're like, no, and you just can't bring yourself to do it, and you're like kind of pissed off, and you don't even know why, but it's just like it's a block, and now you're pissed. And it can often show up, and this is often one of the biggest reasons that people bail right when it's about to get easy. People bail right when you're about to get paid financially, in all kinds of other ways. And Jaya Ramachandran wrote she shared an amazing post. She did the subconscious blocks exercise that I keep talking to you about. You should do it if you haven't already. And if you've done it already, do it again. Keep doing it. It's a tool that's meant to be used over and over. It's like squats, right? You don't do one squat and then be like, look at my booty. My booty is awesome, right? You do lots and lots of squats before your booty gets awesome. So the subconscious blocks exercise is about peeling back the layers of your own psyche so that you get deeply in touch with your own subconscious and find a way and develop a way to interface with it. So Jaya talked about the fact that she grew up with a narcissistic mother. And I'm using her name because this is public knowledge in this group. Normally, I don't reveal names or identifying details, but she talked about how she grew up with a narcissistic mom. If this is a pattern for you, I highly recommend you go hunt for her post. She even had certain books that she screenshotted their pages that had passages that pertained to this pattern. And she realized that her mom was incredibly critical of her. So she would just rip layers of confidence and self-worth and stuff off of Jaya. Jaya would just strive even harder for that approval to prove to herself that she was worth something, right? So she would work super freaking hard. And then when she was successful, her mother would parade her around like a plaything in front of her mother's friends. So then Jaya felt like, wow, I was successful and now you've claimed that success. You made it so hard for me to be successful, first of all. And now when I am successful, you've basically claimed that success as yours. And so that became a really toxic pattern for Jaya. And so what it manifested in her moving into her adult life is that she would work and work and work, and right when it starts to get easy, bail. Right when it starts to grow big, bail. Right when it starts to get successful, bail, as a way of getting revenge on her mother, proving to her that she can't have that success. She can't parade Jaya around. And it's only in releasing this in herself, forgiving her mother, releasing this pattern, releasing these emotions, that she's going to be able to move forward, because it doesn't matter what she builds. It won't be successful if she is herself the source of her sabotage. Does that make sense? So that's what inner child rebellion looks like. How does this resonate for you guys? Yeah, exactly. Satya's like, yeah, you don't do one squat and then say, hey, look at how awesome my booty is, and then never do squats again. Exactly. Especially if you've done squats and you've seen, wow, this really works. You will be shocked. This is another form of self-sabotage. It's not a big pattern, but it's definitely there. You will be shocked at how many people will do something. It will work for them, and then they will not do it again. They're like, oh, it worked. Great. I'm done. Moving on. That's a way of playing small. That's a fear of success right there, right? If it worked for you, especially if you've done the subconscious blocks exercise, freaking go back and do it again. Do it again and again and again. Do it for different things. When you notice yourself wanting something really badly, check, is there a block there? That's what that exercise is for. That's what I developed it for. This was my exercise that I did personally for years before I shared it publicly. It really freaking works. Highly recommend. All right. Last point that I want to get to today. Your purpose has expanded. This happens when people get paralyzed. So we just had a client on one of our group coaching calls. They were making progress. They were seeming to make progress. I should take that back. They were seeming to make progress. They were turning in assignments. Some really key assignments, like the subconscious blocks exercise, they didn't turn in. They somehow forgot, or they meant to do it, but they didn't. Interesting. That's always interesting to me. When somebody forgets that particular exercise, I'm like, oh yeah, interesting. Why'd you forget, huh? So there's always something there. And what we did was we noticed that this client kept saying, oh, I'm stuck. Like, I don't know what to do. What am I supposed to do? Should I do a video? Should I do a post? Should I do what? And these are really weird questions, especially in our program, because it's very bloody obvious what to do. And P.S., this person has had a successful business for years and years and years. It's one of those businesses that was very successful and then kind of ebbed. So they're in that place, right? They know what to do. They've done this themselves for years. And so we were like, that's super interesting that this person is showing up with this weird pattern of being really eager to learn, but also totally not coachable, not actually doing the work or going through the motions, but like doing like almost like a fake squat where they're not engaging the right muscles, so they're deliberately kind of like cheating it. That's what it felt like in this case. So instead of shying away from it, we were like, intervention time, people, like, let's get in there. So what we realized was that, and this has happened to me, I have lived this, which is why I knew to look for it, is many of us who have been successful in business, especially if we've had success in the past, sometimes we'll get to a point where we have kind of outgrown the conversation that we have gotten known for. We've outgrown that conversation. We're kind of bored with it. We've moved on. We're really interested and excited by something new, but that something new is not fully formed yet. And part of what prevents it from being formed is our attachment to what we know and what we are known for. We're so attached to the authority and the ego, for lack of a better term, that comes with that comfort, right, of being okay, of being valid, of being worthy of attention, that comes with whatever we were known for. This is what was happening to me when I had Baby Got Booked, my PR only program, where I was really known for that. I had done very well at that. All our clients had gotten results, yada, yada, yada. But at some point I had outgrown this. I've told this story in lives before, but just to give you a short version, at some point I realized I was done. That business had kind of lost its juice for me. That conversation had lost its juice for me. I was still super interested in the clients. I was loving the connection, but I wanted to connect deeper. And I didn't know what that looked like. And I remember panicking, like we're talking full blown, oh my God, what am I going to do? I remember crying. I remember sitting at my desk and crying because I was like, I hate this job. And then I was really confused because I was like, I made this job. How the frick does anybody ever get here? Like, you created this company, you sculpted it by working it every day. And then one day you wake up and you're like, I fucking hate this and I'm done. And and I had a newborn baby that never slept. I've told this story before. And thank God she didn't sleep, because if I had any more energy, I'd have been super stubborn and I would have used discipline and willpower and shit to like power myself through the inevitable demise of that company, that program, I should say. The company is still the same. And what ended up happening was, because I just didn't have that juice, I sat there and I allowed myself to kind of fall apart a little bit. And I allowed myself to grieve the end of that chapter. And that's what you need to do. If this is you, that's what you need to do. You need to be okay with this other thing being done. And you can grieve for all the pieces of it that are done. Doesn't mean all of it's dead. Doesn't mean you can't take a lot of it and move forward. Everything that you've built has also built you. That's what I learned from that experience. Everything that I had built had also built me. I was not the girl that started that business. I was the girl who had built that business. And that's what gave me all of the skills, the energy, the belief systems, the support, the team, etc., to build the next much more expansive iteration of what I needed to do next. And what will happen if you're not willing to see that, is you will end up sitting in that schism between what is finished and what hasn't begun yet, and you will be paralyzed in that place. So if you're one of those people that's sitting there completely paralyzed, not knowing what to do, that's probably why. Does that make sense? And that brings me to the end of this pattern. How to identify your patterns of subconscious self-sabotage. Hope this was helpful. I'm going to check and see what you've got for me in terms of questions. I have maybe 5 or 10 minutes for questions or comments. So pop in with your questions, please. Oh, and by the way, if you're a coach, a consultant, or a course creator, and you would like really deep help from people who genuinely get it, who've got the goods and know how it's made and are doing it themselves on the daily, then use the link on your screen to apply to talk to somebody on our team so that we can walk you through. First, we can help you identify what some of your blocks are. We can see if there's alignment. We don't work with anybody we're not 100% sure we can help. So it may just come out in the conversation that we can't really help you because we don't know how to build what you want to build. And we'll tell you if that's the case. But if you want to build a deeply connected to your client base, if you really want to create that beautiful closed loop of healing where all your healing heals your clients and all your clients' healing heals you back, if you're interested in a coaching business that looks like that and you're wanting to charge a premium for what you do, so you have, basically two offers, kind of like what I'm doing. We have our super premium offer, which is when clients pay us and get our help. And we have this, which is free, where you can get our help for free. And this by itself will change your life more than the last $2,000 or $3,000 course that you've purchased. Am I right? Like, there are people who've been following me now for a while. Tell me if you have not gotten huge value, huge insight, and huge transformation before you have ever paid us a dime. That's what we teach you to create, is those two things, where you have your free group and where you nourish your people for free. And then when people want the whole deal and they want all of the layers of support and they want to go really, really deep and have it built quickly, that's when they come and work with us for a premium. So use the link on your screen. So Satya says, can you please clarify on that last part about being in the schism between something ending and the feeling of paralysis for next steps? What are you saying needs to happen to move forward from that place? Satya, you need to sit there and you need to allow yourself to be sad for what is over. Most of us don't allow ourselves to grieve. Most of us don't allow ourselves to feel the loss of whatever has ended. Even if it wasn't serving us very well, there is still grief. You put energy and time into building something from nothing. So even if it sucked the whole time, there might still be grief attached to it. There may be grief that you wasted the time building it. There may be grief that it never turned into what you hoped it would turn into. There's so many multiple layers of grief there. And you need to sit and allow yourself to feel that grief. You need to allow yourself to grieve and be sad and accept that it's okay to be sad. Doesn't mean you turn into a giant splodge on the floor. We're not talking about full-blown depression. It's actually the opposite. When you allow yourself to feel what you feel, you're actually depression proof. You're the least likely. Obviously, if you have physical imbalances, that's a different situation. But just for normal people with normal neurophysiology, allowing yourself to feel the feelings actually protects you from extremes, if that makes sense. Okay. Jennifer, here we go. Jennifer says, it has taken me 6 years to realize what a good friend shared with me after I left the daily grind. You should start a business. My reaction, I'm not an entrepreneur. And here I am 6 years later, finally understanding and embracing that I am an entrepreneur. I do have an amazing skill set to coach blended families, particularly those in crisis. Amazing. So there you go. And serving others is definitely part of my healing. Yay. I love it when it lands. Yummy. Okay. So there you go. So Nomita says, oh, this is so true for me. I have never thought of this. Sold my dental practice 8 years ago and just tried to move on like nothing happened. Boom, 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 boom. Right there. Allow yourself to process. And Renee, actually, who's one of our clients, her whole premise is around people who have unprocessed grief and who feel incredibly stuck. So Nomita, I talked about, I identified exactly what your paralysis was. Why can you not move forward? Why can you not connect to your client? Why can you not build what you want to build? Because you haven't processed your grief. Your subconscious is like, we can't add more stuff, more heavy stuff. Because entrepreneurship, let's face it, entrepreneurship is kind of a roller coaster, yeah? Even on a good day. So what's happening is that if you don't process your past, then at some point you kind of you're full. Your subconscious is like, cannot handle any more big emotion. Will now stop at this level until we jettison some of it. So you just basically have to create space, if that makes sense. So there you go. I love it. We're out of time. I have loved spending this time with you. Thank you for listening to me blather and heal and laugh and sneeze bum and all of that other good stuff. I will be back next Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 PT. I did say sneeze bum. sneeze. No, not sneeze bump. That would be weird. That would be like pelvic floor issue weird. We don't need to go there. This is not that kind of video. Cat bums are pretty much as non-G rated as it's going to get. And with that, I will bid you goodbye. Bye.